Today's video is very hard for me to talk about. And this is a complete real story that happened to me. I got stranded on Mount Saint Helens in June 2023. So here is a little survival story time of a little bit of what happened to me. I wrote a little bit about it. So yeah, here is a real raw story that I wrote about my experience. Due to trauma, I blocked out some things out of the story. So this is just parts and bits to what happened to me. If you want to know more, you can comment it down below, and if I can answer, I will try to my best of my ability, but there's certain things I'm not fully comfortable talking about. So I will give you a summary of what happened from what I remember, because this did happen in 2023 and it is now 2026. So it's been really hard for me to be able to open up about this. So here is a real raw little story that I wrote called Surviving the Wilderness on Mount Saint Helens by Carolyn Melody Mackis. It all started when I was tricked and manipulated by a narcissistic guy with brown hair and brown eyes, who was lying and using me and scheming behind my back to launch a dagger in my heart. And I was too naive, so I fell for all his lies and deceptions, hoping that I can change the darkness inside his heart. But instead, I was being left and abandoned, while I was being tormented for months by his actions and being stranded by him during my lowest moments. I couldn't understand. Why was the one person that I cared about during this time going behind my back and scheming to hurt me? I was hoping one day he would turn from his dark roots, but instead he left me to suffer in my pain that consumed me. I never understood why, no matter how much I tried to change myself to gain their approval, I was never good enough to them. They viewed me as a failure. So going back to June 2023, the day we were lost on a mountain, Mount Saint Helens, it all began one day when they invited me to go on a camping trip. And because I loved adventures and all of my friends all encouraged me to go on this little granola girl hiking trip with them. Well, little did I know that this was about to be the most terrorizing experience of my life back then. I was only 18 years old. See, in the past, growing up, I used to go on adventures and camping trips with my parents in a little trailer, so I thought that I had the skills in me to be like MacGyver. But boy, I was wrong. And this trip became a very frightful experience. I agreed going with them because everything seemed to be fine at first. We went on this hiking trail, and while we were walking through this rocky trail on the mountain, everything seemed normal until later that night when we found our camping spot. We pitched our tents, and little did I know that this was the start of the scariest night of my life, and how this girl, who's blinded by false lies, got lost on a mountain with them. But after we pitched our tent, I was wearing a Lynn Lapid merch shirt and pink Lululemon pair of shorts and holding my Stanley cup. You know I gotta have the essentials. Can't forget the Stanley. I gotta be hydrated. And on my little hike, what I thought was gonna be a little hike turned into not so little. It turned into a little night that I can never forget. I never been fully sure of who I was as a person growing up. I was trying to figure out who and what my hobbies were, and was trying to be who I was trying to be at that time. I was trying to be like a granola girl, and after having my visco phase during COVID, I became very obsessed with the outdoors. I always loved going to the beach, and I've always enjoyed little bonfires. But little did I know this was going to be the most unique and challenge of me learning skills that I needed to get me off Mount Saint Helens. I didn't realize how big that mountain was until I finally got off, and then I finally realized what I got myself into could have turned very ugly very quickly. So at the time, I was too embarrassed to tell my folks that I was trying to go on a hike with someone that I was just trying to get to know, because I knew my parents would not have encouraged this spontaneous, adventurous behavior of mine, which I understand was their version of trying to keep me safe. But for me, I've always wanted to do reckless and impulsive things because I love experiencing daring things, like parasailing 800 feet above Ocean City, Maryland, which is something I did a couple years later after this story. I've always enjoyed jet skiing and aviation, and I've always made it a mission in my life to try new things and kind of live my life like my favorite YouTuber, Kara and Nate. I used to watch their videos a lot growing up, and they've always inspired me to want to see the world and try new things. I've always been interested in minimalism and travel videos on YouTube, So I thought that this was what I was getting myself into, a harmless trip with someone who lied to me, calling themselves a quote-unquote super experienced hiker. I thought that they knew what they were doing, so I basically just thought, oh, I'm in the great hands of someone who knows everything about the outdoors. Oh boy, how I was very much mistaken. Unfortunately, they did not have as many survival skills as I thought they did. So I definitely was not expecting that. I thought that they knew everything, which was my fault. So, they picked me up in their Nissan Xterra, and we were heading to Mount Saint Helens, and I packed my bags, and we drove up to the mountain, Mount Saint Helens, which was about to turn it into a night of my hell. It first started fine. We went to a very rocky trail, and later stopped at a river, and we were hanging out and goofing around. Then later, we decided to go look for a good spot to pitch our tents at, and we finally picked a spot close to the main road. And our tent was set up, so we were basically wanting to make a bonfire, but the fire was dying, so we needed to collect more firewood. So they sent me out to the woods to go gather some firewood. But the issue was the sun was setting, so it was getting very dark very fast. They followed me. Next thing we know, we couldn't find our way out. We started walking way too far into the woods, which was very dumb of us, because we probably could have found our way out if we didn't start walking that far. Then the next thing we know if we started walking around in circles, and at this point all the trees were starting to look the same. We were so lost and forgot which way we came from, because we went into the forest way too deep, and then I started to hear coyotes all around us, and I was terrified. I was like, man, am I going to die out here? And I was having a very bad anxiety and panic attack, and eventually we started walking, and eventually we got way too deep, and I was like, we just need to stay put somewhere, because we were getting more and more lost wandering around. So we did. We found a random little spot, like near a bush or something, and we had a barely working lighter on us, because our lighter was barely working, and I was trying to force us to make a fire using the classic little stick method. And because I didn't dress appropriately for the weather in my little lapid merch shirt, and my pink Lululemon shorts, and my Crocs, because I didn't think it was going to be so cold. So I was shivering and shaking. I literally thought I was going to have pneumonia again. It was so cold, and eventually we made a fire, but because of how windy it was, it did not last very long. Eventually they let me use their flannel, which helped, but they should have offered that a lot sooner, because I was literally getting so sick. I'm so surprised I didn't get a major illness from this or die, because I was very much in a panic state of mind and shaking and freezing to death outside. I just remember how scared I was with all the animals outside, not knowing if we were about to get attacked by coyotes. So I began hoping for a miracle to happen. So while I was out there, I started hoping for a miracle to get us out. In my brain, I was saying, I don't want to die like this. And I'm hoping by the time that the sun comes back up, that we will find our way out. Basically, we huddled against each other to keep our body warmth for the whole night, until the sun finally came back out. And I believe it was probably 5 a.m. at this point, and at this point I was so dehydrated and so weak I was struggling to walk. And we literally had to have them carry me and walk me out of the forest. But the issue was when the sun came out, we were disagreeing on which way we should go. They were wanting to go one direction and I wanted to go the other direction. Because I had this weird feeling in my heart that was telling me that we were supposed to go to a certain direction. And maybe I was going crazy, but I'm so glad I followed my gut. The whole time I was in a panic state mode. During the whole night, they showed very little emotion towards me. Looking back at this trip, I realized how cold-hearted they were. It's like they didn't care at all that I was terrified for my life, that we weren't going to make it out. I know that they were scared, but at least they could have told me that, hold on. I'm gonna re-say this because I kind of got lost. I know they were scared, but I could tell they had no care if I was safe. At least that's how I felt. When they really didn't do much to help me, at least that's how I felt. It just kind of felt like they were showing me no emotional support. And with how stressed out I was in a panic state of mind at all. So looking back at the whole time, it just felt like I was, hold on. out there on my own, with the lack of comfort or barely getting any help from them. That should have warned me about their true intentions. Part of me have always wondered if this was set up by them, but I don't know for sure. I mean, it probably wasn't, but it just felt like this was intentional. Sometimes, cause why would you treat me so horribly? After the kindness I shared with you, instead of you helping me, you just used me to gain things out of me. Then you lied about my identity and worth, and you tried to make me feel like I was garbage, like I wasn't good enough. You used to call me a failure. Well, if I was such a failure, why would I have tried to help you? And that you tried to make me look like I was the bad guy for trying to be there unconditionally, and not judging you for your appearance like you did with me. You judged me for grieving my only buddy who passed away from suicide the year prior to this trip, and for all my setbacks in life, like my health issues and lack of a driver's license. So you used to make fun of me, and you and your buddies used to bully me, saying that I looked like a 12-year-old boy to you. The way you treated me is appalling after how kind I was to you. So it was a lesson to me to never let someone walk all over me like you did. Also, just an FYI, if you end up reading this, I did end up getting my high school diploma with a Perseverance Award in June 2025. I used the pain you gave me from that night, and I turned that into motivation, and now I have my high school diploma. I'm so proud of myself, even though I graduated 2 years late, and for everything I've accomplished without you in my life. Now going back to that night, again, we both finally decided to go that direction that we had a weird gut feeling to follow, and I'm guessing it was probably around 5 a.m. at this point, is my guess. Well, the sunrise was coming up, and we were walking together, and I knew if I didn't stop walking, something worse would have happened to me because of how weak I was. So we continued walking, and we found this hiking trail that we walked on for literally forever. And eventually, on that hiking trail, we found a main road again, which was a miracle at this point, and it was pretty late at night by this time. We made it out the next day. I'm guessing it was around 5 or 6 p.m. By the way that they treated me after helping them made me so mad. After how I saved them, once we found our way back to camp, I was so sick by what they said to me when we were back in the tent. It was like they had no respect for me at all when I was trying to have a sweet time with them. They just turned it into what they wanted, someone to use and manipulate for their own selfish reasons instead of caring about me as a person. So I was sad because I thought that they were going to treat me better than that. And then I woke up and I decided I needed to do some business. So I decided to go on the other side of the woods for privacy purposes. And I walked too far in for a second time. And that time I was out there all alone on the opposite side of the mountain. And they had probably no idea where I was. I had my phone on me, but it was at 2%. And there was no cell service. So I was freaking out there. When my phone finally died, I had the worst panic attack of my life. And when I was all alone on the other side of the mountain freaking out. So I decided if I was going to get separated again, I told them that I would scream SOS in case anything happens to me. Unfortunately, something did happen to me. My own lack of thinking got me back out in the woods way too far. So I was terrified, screaming SOS in a panic attack. I was terrified. I was so terrified. I started screaming SOS, SOS. And this time I genuinely didn't think I was going to find my way back out there because I was alone, back out of the mountain because that time I was alone. I was screaming SOS at the top of my lungs for literally 2 hours is my guess. I started walking around trying to find the main road again, but at this point all the trees again looked the same to me. And I couldn't find any light from anywhere, so I couldn't see you very well, and I had no idea which direction to go. So I was just screaming SOS. Luckily, my screams is the only reason why I was found. Luckily, they had the idea when I didn't come back that something happened, and they luckily started searching for me, which I'm very grateful for that. That was probably the only sweet thing that I did remember from that time that they did. I'm very grateful for their help, even though they weren't grateful for mine. It felt I was very lucky when they came out with a first aid kit, and we found our way back on a main road again, together. When they found me, they helped me find my way out. I was so grateful for that help. That was probably the one positive moment that I had with them at that time. It really did feel like they cared, but at the same time, was it just some kind of manipulation? It was really hard for me to tell because their behavior was so back and forth with me. I couldn't really tell if they had good intentions towards me at this time. By the time we made it back to camp, I was so freaked out of the mountain, and what all happened to us out there. I was like, we're packing up this car and we're leaving. I was so weak and ill. It literally looked like I got mauled by a bear, and that's how I felt. I was so scratched up by the pricker bushes, and I was so weak inside, and I was so glad to get off that mountain. We packed up our tent, and we finally started driving back off the mountain. When I finally got cell service again, my phone was blowing up. All my friends and family thought I was kidnapped. My family thought I was kidnapped because they didn't hear a single word from me for 2 days. Some people thought I was passed out at my friend's house on their couch because I was too embarrassed to tell the truth. I was like, well, if I tell them that I went to go hang out with this person, maybe I won't ever get to hang out with them again. So I was afraid of telling anyone. I was ashamed if everyone knew who I was with at that time, that people would judge me and think that I'm not good enough for them, which is okay. I'm happy that we had our positive moments together, and I'm grateful for the time that I did get to have with them in my life. But at the same time, it was they were a very toxic person, and I've always felt like I was never going to be good enough for them, because like they had so many high standards for me, and their family just didn't really like me for whatever reason. They judged me off the bat, and that really hurt me. So yeah, after this incident, we kind of became trauma bonded, which kind of sucked because it kind of just made everything fall apart between me and them. It's like they never really wanted to be around me. It just became like a trauma dynamic between us, and I'm very upset about that because I feel like if it wasn't for this experience, maybe me and them would have been on better terms, or maybe not. But besides that, I'm very grateful that we got to have some really fun adventures separate to this, and they'll always hold a special place in my heart. Even though we went our separate ways, I know things ended up being toxic, but I'm very grateful for the good moments, and I don't want to let the bad moments ruin everything in my life, because that really did shape me into the person that I am today. I know in the future to guard my heart and to be a lot more smarter and be skilled by bringing the right essentials with me, like camping supplies, water, food, and an emergency blanket is what we should have had. And to bring a compass. I'm surprised that we didn't have to get rescued, because I genuinely thought we were going to need to be rescued. So I'm very grateful that I somehow made us find our way back out of that mountain, because I'm not very smart. Thinking to just rely on me, just relying on me, either because I'm not no expert, but next time I'll definitely be more prepared than we were. When I did get home, when everybody was blowing up my phone, I explained to everybody that I was okay. And then to my parents, my parents were calling me on the phone saying, "Oh, by the way, Carolyn, your flight to the East Coast is not tomorrow. You're actually flying to the East Coast today." So literally coming straight off Mount Saint Helens, I was straight rushing to Portland Airport, flying to BWI, Maryland, to having my uncle come and pick me up, to take me to an Orioles baseball game. It was the most feverish dream kind of day of my life. It was so bizarre. But yeah, that's the story of summer, of my summer in June 2023. And I hope all of y'all reading this have enjoyed. And yeah, basically be very smart and wary with who you're hanging out with, because you don't want this kind of thing to happen to you, of course. And to be better prepared by wearing proper hiking gear, and to probably go in warmer weather is a huge suggestion of mine. And also to have Life 360, so somebody knows where you guys are at, would have been smart. But yeah, that's just a little summary of basically what happened to me. And here are some tips that I wrote. Tips to survive a mountain from Carolyn Mackes. Bring a Stanley but forget to bring it with when you need it, like I did, unfortunately. Please bring proper hiking and survival equipment. Please bring water and food, or at least a snack with you. Get a bright colored safety blanket that could be used to signal rescue. Bring a compass or someone smarter along if you're hiking. Dress appropriately for the weather. Tell someone ahead of time where you should be and how long to have them track your location or call rescue if you're not home by a certain time, so they have a general idea where to look for you. And to not let a scary experience scare you from going to other adventures. Also, to bring a medical kit, bring firewood and a better lighter, bring a flashlight, bring bear spray and a taser. Be cautious of who you trust and don't ever let someone make you inferior. That is some of my recommendations, and that is a short summary of what happened to me on Mount Saint Helens. And yeah, sorry I got a little panicky reading that, but I hope somebody can use the story to basically warn others to be very cautious, and that alpine divorce is a real thing. And I don't know if we can consider my situation fully alpine divorce, but it was scary enough. And yeah, you really, really need to be cautious and safe who you're going out with. And to never let someone make you feel like you're worthless is a huge thing. It's like, I really got so mentally destroyed by this person where I thought that I wasn't good enough for them, but in reality, I was good enough. I just needed to be safer with who I was hanging out with, and I was hanging out with someone very horrible, who treated me very horrible in that mountain. So I cut some parts out of the story, but moral of the story is I survived Mount Saint Helens. So yeah, that's a short summary of Mount Saint Helens, and if anybody has more questions, please comment that down below. Thank you.